What's up? Your boys at the Money Stop are back. He is Cole Cusumano. I'm younger brother Steven Cusumano. And man, what a week it was at Texas. Chase Elliott is back in victory lane here on your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. The Money Stop, presented by Kicking the Tires. It was a showcase for us, Cole, with some of the drivers we talked about. Top 7 drivers are all ones that we discussed on the podcast last week. So if you're listening in, hopefully you told us. And if you aren't listening in, hopefully you are this week. But let's just start right there, Cole. Chase Elliott snaps a 42-race winless streak, and he's back. He's in victory lane.
Yeah, what a weekend, man. For us, from a DFS and betting perspective, it was one of, if not maybe our most successful weekend yet. And then I just want to say, mile-and-a-half tracks are back and better than ever. And I am so happy to see this because I know obviously short tracks are the roots of NASCAR, but I feel like in the modern age and kind of that Jimmy Johnson era, NASCAR really made its bread and butter off the mile-and-a-half tracks. And, you know, between Atlanta and Texas and what we've seen from Kansas the last couple years, Charlotte as well, like the racing at these tracks has gone up significantly in regards to the product. It is just incredible to see. It really wildly unpredictable, just competitive racing from flag to flag. And just cannot say enough good things about what NASCAR's done with this 7th generation car and these packages for the mile-and-a-half tracks. But just speaking on Chase Elliott for a second here, obviously snaps that 42-race winless streak, but I think a lot of people forget just how good of a driver he is. I mean, he's a former champion, obviously. This is the same driver that won 5 races the first year at the next-gen car. And you know, before he went down last year with his injury, he was still running top 5 and being very competitive. Fast forward to this year, before this current 3-race top 5 streak, he's been a top 10 car easily, one of the best teams, most complete teams in the garage area. And I think what we saw from Chase in that race was that he was not going to be denied. I think, once Kyle Larson went down in that second stage, it was very much wide open, but Chase Elliott probably had the second best car. Obviously, there were some really good runs from Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski as well. But Chase Elliott, again, I just felt like would not be denied. I had seen it firsthand at the track. Chase just seemed like a different person, just a better headspace, more determined, I guess. And obviously, we've seen it on track as well. Been one of the best cars all season, I would say. And now they've finally been putting it together. And I'm really curious to see what they can do with the win in their pocket now after 42 races, because I was someone who was of the thought that once he finally got that next win, he would just go on a tear. And if we have someone like Chase Elliott going back to his old self and winning races along with his teammates Kyle Larson and William Byron, that could be a very scary thing for the rest of the field, and I'm really, really excited to see how it plays out going into this, halfway point of the season.
Yeah, we've said it for basically a year now. When he gets that first win coming back from injury, the floodgates are going to be open. And it's also crazy to think, Cole, that injury took place. I remember we were at our cousin's wedding weekend, and so that was almost exactly a year ago. So it's almost poetic to see it come full circle for Chase Elliott with that accident in Colorado, and now he is back in victory lane. And I think we both agree. I was going to ask you before the race ended last week. I was planning on asking you in this first segment of the podcast if Chase Elliott's back, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. He's absolutely back, and so are we. I mean, we just mentioned the fact that we had a really successful week in predicting the drivers here, and that's also including the fact, Cole, that, like, just to harp on something you said, the intermediate and mile-and-a-half tracks have been kind of unpredictable. And just in the sense, I wouldn't say unpredictable, but they've been very, very competitive. And that has made it so that it's important to analyze drivers that may put up a good result at a place like Texas. And looking at our top 10, the top 7 drivers were all ones that we mentioned in our episode. And not only that, Cole, we're not going to go into the guys that didn't finish in the top 10, but the other guys that we mentioned were running top 5, top 10 a lot of the race. Our sleepers and our value picks didn't finish there, but they put up good results too. We're just going to go down this top 10 here with Chase Elliott. Brad Keselowski was one of your favorites last week, who rounded up 2nd. William Byron 3rd. Tyler Reddick 4th. Daniel Suarez came out of nowhere to finish 5th, and we were on top of that, as well as Chase Briscoe, who was one of our favorite values. He finished 6th. Bubba Wallace in 7th. And then the top 10 rounded out by a couple surprises, especially in 10th. Austin Dillon 8th, Kyle Busch 9th, and Carson Hocevar in 10th. We also saw a really good day from Zane Smith. There was a lot of comers and goers in this race, Cole, because of the varying pit strategies, but I think overall we were on top of it. And, thinking about what is to come, we go to a race that we just had a very successful week, and now we're heading to Talladega, where literally anything can happen.
Yeah, and you know what? It's tough because you're going into our 10th race of the season now, and you're finally starting to get some consistency out of certain drivers, and now you're going to a place that's essentially a momentum killer in Talladega. But I think there are ways to overcome the difficulties of navigating Talladega and the draft and all the madness that ensues there. And there's definitely a few drivers I'm looking at that can definitely either continue their momentum into this week or, turn their season around. Because the way I look at it is that Talladega is a clean slate. If you're having a struggle-filled season to this point, this is the way to turn around. And I think there is an art to speedway racing. And there's certainly drivers in this field that can overcome. And I'm looking forward to getting to that point because, we always talk about it every year on this show, but betting at Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta is just a lot of fun for, I guess, anybody that's a bettor in the NASCAR realm, but just even newcomers to the sport because the odds are so favorable. Case in point, the favorite this week is Ryan Blaney at plus 900. So we'll get into it more as we get down to the later stages of the show, but just a lot of really good odds, and it's always a really fun week to go with your gut and just hopefully bank out really, really big.
Yeah, Cole, you mentioned newcomers to the sport, and that's something I want to mention with regards to kind of the format of this episode because first and foremost, we've talked about varying tracks. We go into a lot of very in-depth analysis, Cole, but in case there's a very new listener out there, you've got different kinds of tracks in NASCAR. You've got the short tracks, the intermediates, the super speedways, and the road courses. The super speedways, like we're going to this week in Talladega, are notoriously unpredictable. So you can throw a bet on the guy that has the 30th best odds, and he very well might go out there and win the race. So with that being said, there's less numbers and analysis that goes into these kinds of episodes compared to a normal one. And you're going to get a little bit more of instincts and guys that traditionally have done well at super speedways. So that's kind of, if you're new to the sport, if you're new to NASCAR, new to the podcast, that's kind of where the bread is to be made at a place like Talladega as compared to Texas, where everything was very cut and dry for us. So we're going to kind of go with the vibes this week. And if that means we pick the same driver for our favorites, our sleepers, our values, then so be it. But one thing that is going to be very important, Cole, for daily fantasy purposes will be the starting lineup. That's the case every week, but it's especially the case this week because if you're a driver that starts last, you have just as good a chance of winning at Talladega as you do as the driver who starts on the pole for all intents and purposes. But the DFS caveat to that is that you're going to get more place differential points. So that will be determined at Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time. We'll give you our daily fantasy kind of ideas at the end of the episode, but of course not going to lock anything in until the starting lineup is determined. But Cole, you teased some of the pre-qualifying odds with the favorite, Ryan Blaney, who is now being listed at plus 800 per bet MGM, so his line has moved. He is co-favorites with Brad Keselowski at plus 800, and then you've got three drivers tied at the third best odds, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and William Byron, all at plus 1,200 in the odds entering this weekend at Talladega. So, Cole, without further ado, as we get into this favorites section, we're picking our favorite drivers for the win, the most sure bets out there in the field for what is an unpredictable event. Why don't you kick us off here?
All right, so Chase Elliott just snapped a 42-race winless streak, and I think Talladega is a great spot for Ford to snap their winless streak in this Ford Mustang dark horse body in 2024. Race number 10 of the season. Can Ford find victory lane? I definitely think so. Signs point to that because if you look at the drafting tracks we've been to this year in Daytona and Atlanta, a Ford driver led the most laps in both those races. They combined for 52% of laps led in Daytona and 68% of laps led in Atlanta, totaling out to 61% of all laps led at drafting-style tracks in 2024. So clearly the dominant cars. Also, can't forget that they swept the front row in both those races in Michael McDowell and Joey Logano. Ford has also won the last two Superspeedway events, including the 2023 fall race at Talladega, won by none other than our favorite in Ryan Blaney, who again is plus 800 for the race win and the most expensive driver for DFS for good reason at $11,000. And why is that? Again, obviously, Ryan Blaney won the most recent race at Talladega. That was his third win at the 2.66 mile track, and it also marked his third straight top two finish there. He has a lowest finish of 11th there in the next-gen car, and a series best average finish of 4th, which it doesn't even sound fake. It does sound fake that Ryan Blaney has a top 5 4th place average at a place like Talladega. That is just sickening, honestly. Also in the next gen, those 4 starts, he has the most laps led at 109. The next best is actually 55, so pretty significant gap there to the next best car. And I would say he's the only sure thing at Talladega, and he's definitely getting in that same air as guys like the Earnhardts, Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski. He is just simply automatic at Talladega, and it's just so weird to say, but the numbers don't lie, and the numbers say that Ryan Blaney is the best of the best at Talladega. Now, for my second best pick for a favorite, I'm going to go right with riding the momentum from last week and picking Chase Elliott, who is plus 1,200 for the race win and $10,000 for DFS, so $1,000 cheaper than Ryan Blaney. He is trying to avoid Talladega being a momentum killer with 3 straight top 5s and coming off his first win, obviously, as mentioned numerous times this past weekend at Texas. And there is definitely reason to believe that he can overcome the odds here at Talladega because he's only one of 4 drivers with top 10s in 3 of 4 races in the next-gen car there. He has a win in there as well with a lowest finish of 12th and a second-best average finish of 6.8. Also a 2-time Talladega winner total. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, he was one of the strongest cars in Daytona. He had a really strong car in Atlanta. He got taken out pretty early, but he was able to remain competitive with a beat-up car in that race. So Chase Elliott, he's been one of the fastest drivers all season, fastest teams all season. He's been one of the best drivers at Talladega in the next gen. I would definitely say a second best to Ryan Blaney. And he's my second favorite. So I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott, the 2 best buddies for my favorites going into Talladega.
Well, I will admit those are 2 really good picks. Those are 2 I will double down on you with. But I'm also going to choose 2 additional ones because we've got to have more than 2 favorites. And I think it starts for me with the guy who is, I think through 10 races this year, we've seen some guys that have cemented themselves as contenders. But I think at the top of that list, guy that's won at every style track now basically is William Byron. And William Byron won at our last Super Speedway race. So I don't know how you look at William Byron at plus 1,200 and don't think that that is something you've got to think about. I think Willie B has put himself in a position where any track we go to, you should be thinking of him. And I really feel that this is kind of a blossoming period for him in super speedways. Like, he's not a guy that we have thought of previously at super speedways, but guess what? His first win was at Daytona in the next gen car, or rather right before the next gen car in 2020. He won at Daytona again last year, so he's starting to sprinkle these wins in, and I think that his confidence has never been higher. I think that he and that team knows going into any race that they're going to be a contender, and this is a gut pick more than anything, but it's also a pick based on what we've seen recently, and we have one super speedway race, traditional super speedway race to go off of in Daytona, again, not counting Atlanta, to go off of, and William Byron won that race. So I'm picking William Byron as one of my favorites. And the other one, Cole, I'm glad you brought up the metrics for Ford at the super speedway events this year, because that's something that, I'll be honest, if you did not look up that Ford's led the most laps at both super speedway events this year, I wouldn't have known that. And it's easy to get swept under the rug because they haven't won a race yet this year. And you also mentioned riding the hot hand in Chase Elliott. I'm going to do the same with Brad Keselowski, who is notoriously, you mentioned it before, one of the best super speedway racers of all time. He did not get the result at Talladega in the fall, but finished 5th in this race last year. Last won at Talladega in 2021. This was the site of his first NASCAR win in 2009. I think of Talladega. I think of Brad Keselowski. You could see, the the defeat. He really wanted to win that race as an owner. Obviously, it's good to finish second, but you want to get that first win as owner of RFK Racing or RFK, and it's a matter of time for Brad Keselowski. And I know we've seen the speed at other types of tracks, Texas included, but it just would feel right. It would feel poetic to see him get that win at Talladega, which is the track that I feel like me and a lot of people most closely identify Brad Keselowski with. I mean, he's won at this track, 6 times now, and it's just been a long time coming for Brad, who, again, it's 3 years since he last won here, and coming off the runner-up finish, I know, like you said, it can be a momentum killer, but it just seems like, especially in this next-gen car, since he's moved over to the 6 at RFK, he's always running up front, he's always staying out of trouble, and he's going to be there when it's all said and done at the end, and I think that this is going to be Brad K's week. I'm going to be picking him for the win for this race, and I feel like if I was to pick 4 drivers I feel best about, Cole, it would be the 4 that we just named.
I could not agree more, honestly. Those are my 4 drivers that I had in
William
mind
Byron,
going into this week.
and I like Brad Keselowski.
And
those are 4 drivers that I feel
love what you
very
said about
strongly
William Byron. You took the words out of my mouth, honestly, because I was working last night. I had time to think to myself, and I was thinking about the show, and I was like, damn, William Byron, he's extremely underrated on these drafting style tracks. Like you mentioned, he got his first win at Daytona, got the win at Daytona this year. Like, he's racking up these wins. He's extremely underrated. I wouldn't put him in that same air as like a Ryan Blaney or Brad Keselowski right now, but like he's definitely improving his status on these tracks and asserting himself as someone who's going to be contender everywhere we go, whether it's Talladega, Daytona, or Atlanta. And yeah, Brad Keselowski, I mean, 6-time winner here, scored his first win here, his last win here, and he's just been a contender every single time we go to these tracks. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what he's driving, doesn't matter how he's doing at this point in the season, he's always going to be in contention for that win at these drafting tracks.
Let's talk sleepers here, Cole. So drivers that are not necessarily our favorites for the win, but definitely could see them in victory lane this week. And, we talk about Talladega. We say it every time. It's our 4th year doing this podcast. And we mentioned that the sleepers category might be the most important one because there are a lot of times, I mentioned it at the beginning of the episode too, where it's the drivers outside the top 10 in odds, outside the top 5 in odds that win these races. And anything can happen any given week at the Superspeedway. So kick us off with your sleepers.
Awesome. Yeah, my 2 sleepers were super easy this week. I didn't even look at the stats, the numbers, anything really before making this decision because I mentioned these 2 drivers, or we did actually, early in the season, mainly because they ran so well at Daytona and Atlanta, and they were 2 of the strongest cars to start the season off. They kind of trailed off here in the last few weeks, consistency-wise, but they are by far 2 of the most aggressive drivers on the track. They're actually, ironically, the 2 spring winners at Talladega in the next-gen car, and they're just 2 very similar drivers in general. The first one's going to be Ross Chastain, who was plus $1,800 for the race win and $8,700 for DFS. Coming off a DNF at Texas after leading 33 laps and running 3rd in the final lap of the race. Got obviously tangled up there with William Byron on that final lap coming to the checkered flag. So no way indicative of how that team ran in that race. That was, although his 3rd straight finish lower than 14th and his lowest point of the season to date. So I mentioned earlier in the show, Talladega is a place to kind of clean the slate and right ship. Definitely could be the case for Ross Chastain, who had a shot at the win at Daytona, finished top 10 in Atlanta, and I just noted his aggressiveness on these style tracks. He obviously won at Talladega in the next-gen debut, finished 4th in the fall race that year. So I think Ross Chastain is always someone who's going to be a threat at drafting tracks, just given his aggressive nature. But he's also someone that's proven that he's going to be a front runner at these tracks, again, just thanks to his aggressiveness and his ability to push and be a leader. Someone in the exact same air is going to be Kyle Busch at plus $1,400 for the race win and $9,500 for DFS. Again, very much in the exact same vein as Ross Chastain in pretty much every single aspect. Had a shot at the win in Daytona. He was 7 thousandths of a second away from the win in Atlanta. Got the aggressive driving style that's obviously put him in position every single time we go to these tracks. And again, got the win at the next gen at Talladega, an additional top 5 finish. And I just think they're both very much equals this week, which is a very good thing. They profile very well for Talladega. They both won here before in the next-gen car. and I think they have the prowess on these tracks in the next gen to get it done. So Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, give me them two as my sleepers.
I love that. And they've, like you said, there's been times where the both of them have been knocking on the door this year. For my two sleepers, Cole, I'm going to go with two more drivers that I instantly think of when we go to any super speedway, but especially Talladega. And my first sleeper is Bubba Wallace, who is plus 1,600 for the race win. He has had himself a really, really strong start to the season and has just run into trouble at the end of some of these races. But he's another guy that's really been knocking on the door. Got his first career win in a rain-shortened event, Talladega, in 2021. But Bubba seems to be one of those guys that just has the instinct. There's no other way to quantify it. You can't look at starting results, finishing results, laps led. He just has the super speedway instinct. And again, had the win at Talladega earlier in his career, has been running well. That is all of my logic on Bubba Wallace. He has been a guy that, again, you look at some of the surprise winners this year, I put him in maybe the same tier in terms of like where he's at in his career with Daniel Suarez, in terms of he could win his way in by stealing a race here and potentially one other. And Bubba was at a point in his career where I feel like any super speedway we go to, he's going to be a contender, and I certainly feel that way this week at Talladega. Another guy that, Cole, I think of more so when we're at Daytona, but any super speedway, is another Ford driver, and that is Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric, who you and I saw win the Daytona 500 in person in 2021, is plus 1,800 for the race win, which is tied for the 10th best odds with Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain on BetMGM. Cindric has been another one. He's just had a knack for super speedways from literally his first race in the Cup Series as a full-time driver. Finished fifth in our last race at Talladega in the fall of last year, and at Daytona finished, he's had a couple of rough results recently, but had back-to-back top three finishes at Daytona from his 2022 season. So for Austin Cindric, I know that he's going to have some really good drafting partners. You know, we've talked about Ryan Blaney. We've talked about Brad Keselowski. I think that that's one thing that's been a constant at these super speedways is, you mentioned it before, Cole, the Fords have been fast, but in this next-gen era, they have been the best pushers in the field. Austin Cindric is a guy that has been, I would say, in this next-gen era, one of the best pushers. He's going to be there at the end. He's got that instinct. And between he and Bubba Wallace, those are easily my two favorite sleepers this week for the race win.
Yeah, I mean, look at Austin Cindric at Daytona and Atlanta. Daytona, he had a shot at the win, caused that, I think, the last wreck of the race. Atlanta, we all know what happened there. So I think he's a great pick anytime we go to these tracks, obviously. And then Bubba Wallace as well, coming off a really, really strong week at Texas. Really strong few weeks in general. Had that top five also at Martinsville. So a lot of positive momentum on his side. Saw him talking to Corey LaJoy on his podcast recently and just saying how he feels better at the racetrack. He's in a better mood, and that's definitely translating to the track. So I like both those picks a lot. I like all four of our picks a lot for the sleepers category in Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, Austin Cindric, and Bubba Wallace.
Well, Cole, there's definitely money to be made there. I feel like the sleepers are probably the most important segment when it comes to Talladega. But we got some value picks to go through too, and there's definitely value to be made, especially in daily fantasy. Once we get a look at the starting lineups, we'll have a better idea of what the true values are. But in terms of race winner values, there's definitely some that pop off the page here, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and one of those guys I'm going to go with, someone who mentioned last week as almost a sure thing was Eric Jones. Didn't really pan out the way we expected it to, but I do think things will turn around here at Talladega, because Eric Jones has been one of the best cars at Talladega in the next-gen car. But he's also been a driver that's always been really good here in general, very under the radar, top 10 guy almost every single week at Talladega in his career in the Cup Series. His only top 10 in 2024 has come at Daytona, so our only other true superspeedway track on the circuit that we've been to so far. He is also one of four drivers with top 10s in 3 of 4 next-gen starts at Talladega. The other ones were Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Daniel Suarez, actually. He has the second most laps led in the next-gen car at Talladega with 55. So we mentioned Ryan Blaney leading the most, 109. He was that aforementioned second best at 55. His 11th place average finish is 5th best in the series. And those are not really any fluky numbers. I mean, anytime you could have like series best stats or near that at Talladega or Daytona, That's really impressive. I would definitely call him the second or third best, probably third best guy outside of Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney for Talladega. And I think he's a really safe bet for this week at plus $2,500 and $7,000 for DFS. For my final value pick, I'm going to go with someone who is a true value and someone who has turned heads on drafting tracks, and that's going to be Todd Gilliland at plus 4,000 for the race win and $6,100 for DFS. And we've noted this the last couple of years, Front Row Motorsports' prowess on super speedways and drafting style tracks. That has, been tenfold in 2024. And honestly, outside of Daytona and Atlanta, there has not been much to brag about for that stable compared to last year especially. So seeing as they performed well on those two tracks, I look for them both, McDowell and Gilliland, to perform well at Talladega. But speaking on the front row, Michael McDowell, 2 front row starts, 1 pole, 1 top 10 this year. Todd Gilliland qualified 4th and led the most laps at Atlanta this year. And big stat here, actually, Todd Gilliland is the laps leading leader at drafting tracks in 2024 so far through 2 races. So really interesting note there. And at Talladega in the next gen, he has 2 top 10s, and he's coming off a 12th place finish in the fall there for a 14th place average finish, which ranks top 10, 8th to be specific overall in the Cup Series for average finish. So Todd Gilliland, really under the radar pick, and someone who I think can definitely win you a lot of money if you're picking him for DFS at $6,100.
Yeah, it's a great deep dive for Todd Gilliland. I did not know he had led the most laps at drafting tracks this year, and that's definitely something to keep an eye on and a true deep dive value. I'm going to go 2 similarly valued drivers here with my picks, Cole. First with my volatile pick, and anytime we use that V word, it usually ends with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, he's a guy that you just don't know what you're going to get at super speedways. It's one of 2 things. It's going to be a finish below 30th or a finish that is first. So we talked about it before on the podcast. We've been correct in guessing him as a race winner at the Daytona 500 last season. But for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. valued at plus 3,500, I like that as a value because, you're picking someone at that price range. You don't have much to lose because he's valued at drivers like Michael McDowell, Chase Briscoe, Austin Dillon. He's in fact just below Eric Jones. So he's outside the top 20 in odds. It's a low risk pick. It's a very high reward pick. So you're picking Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with the expectation that you've got a horse that is going to have a chance to win this race. He might not finish the race, but if he does, he's probably going to win the damn thing. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr., in my opinion, for what he's valued at, is a driver I've gotten my eyes on this week. And at any super speedway, he's definitely one that definitely perks the ears up after he won at Daytona last year. And we've seen it time and time again with Ricky, where he's a lot of times in the big one, and sometimes he wins the race. So we'll see about that. And then another deep dive, Cole, that I want to dig into is Corey LaJoie. He's my second value pick. He's plus 5,000 for the win. He is plus 240 for a top 10 this week. Listen, for Spire Motorsports, the speed has been there recently. I mean, we saw, again, Zane Smith was running in the top 10 last week. Carson Hocevar finished in the top 10. And Corey LaJoie, earlier this year, we saw him run really well at Daytona, finished 4th in the 500, finished 13th the next week at another drafting track in Atlanta. I know for that 17, the results haven't been there since that point, but Corey LaJoie is a guy that when we get down to it at these drafting tracks, he's always there too. And I just feel like we're due for one of those big surprise winners at a super speedway like Daytona or Talladega. And Corey LaJoie is a driver that has risen a lot in popularity and attention, and there's a reason for that. He's got some really good talent in there too, but again, the speed is what I'm taking some stock into, and that it's been there the last few weeks for Spire, while the results haven't always necessarily been there. Corey LaJoie knows his way around drafting tracks. He's got some allies out there with a lot of Chevys on the track, and at plus 5,000, I like that a lot as a value this week.
Yeah, me too. And just speaking again on Spire's success this past week, obviously, but in general, since the next gen car, they've really improved their craft on track and their overall product and everything. So I do like the Corey LaJoie call a lot as well. Stenhouse, it's always going to be one that you kind of you put some money down and hope for the best. Close your eyes and hope for the best, because it's like you said, that V word, volatile. That's exactly what Stenhouse is at these tracks. But when he's proven he can get it done numerous times. He's so good at drafting at these tracks. He's very aggressive. I mentioned how you need that with Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain, but I like the LaJoie one a lot as a safer pick. But Stenhouse is always one to look out for on these tracks like Talladega.
Yeah, if you wake up feeling dangerous, throw a bet on Ricky Stenhouse. So let's get this down to 12 drivers, Cole, one from each tier. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski as my favorite of the week. I'm going to go with Bubba Wallace as my best sleeper. And then for my value, I will take Corey LaJoie at plus 5,000.
Awesome. So I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney for my favorite, Ross Chastain for my sleeper, and then Todd Gilliland for my value pick.
So that pretty much puts it in good perspective. I think this is a week where you should probably have a wide array of drivers to choose from. So while we've got that down to 6, keep the 12 in mind, especially as we get closer to learning starting positions for this weekend's race at Talladega. Next up, Cole, we're going to talk some big money bets, and I almost want to change the name of this segment for super speedways and call them insurance bets, because you really shouldn't have any big money bets at a super speedway. You might have a slam dunk like a Brad Keselowski or a Ryan Blaney, who are both minus 125 to finish in the top 10, but you're never guaranteed anything. So big money bets are our favorite prop bets of the week, usually top 5s or top 10s. But what I kind of usher you to do this week and at any super speedway is any driver you put a race winner pick on, if you feel good about them, like Brad or Blaney or Elliott or Byron, throw an insurance bet on them to finish in the top 3 or in the top 5 or in the top 10, because, we saw it literally last week in the Xfinity Series, and we've seen it time and time again this year in the Cup Series. Even at our last drafting track, your driver might lose by 2/1000ths of a second. He might lose by less than an inch on the track, and you're going to be really pissed off if you had him for the win and didn't have a top 3 insurance bet on him. Like if you're Ryan Blaney and you lost by 0.02 of a second at the line at Talladega, sure, that plus 800 for the race win is very enticing, but plus 240 for the race, for a top 3 rather, a podium finish, is just as good. So if there's a 3-wide photo finish, guess what? You're still going to make some money. So I'm just going to kind of end my talking point on big money bets and say that any driver we talked about or that you feel good about for the win, just throw an insurance bet, a top 3, top 5, top 10 bet on them. And that's my best advice for this week.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That was actually perfectly said. I was going to say the exact same thing pretty much. These are insurance bets this week, so it's going with your gut. Whoever you think's going to win this week, which, full transparency, I don't really have that gut feeling yet. Whoever you think's going to win this week, throw an insurance bet down for a top 5 bet, because all the top 5 bets, they are plus 190 or better in the case of Ryan Blaney and below. So I think the only sure thing, in my opinion, is Ryan Blaney to finish top 5 at plus 190, and that's only because he has an average finishing position of 4th at Talladega in the next gen. He's got 3 straight top 2 finishes, coming off his 3rd win here, and also a really heartbreaking result at Texas after a really strong run. So I love that pick. Ryan Blaney top 5 plus 190, but rule of thumb this week, use these as an insurance bet for who you think's to win the race.
On that note, Cole, we kind of adapt the episodes when we go to super speedways. Another one that we usually go over in terms of types of bets are the head-to-head driver match bets. And cut and dry, we don't recommend them this week. Again, it's just so unpredictable. You wanna be smart. There's money to be made this week at Talladega, but you want to be smart. And I think the money to be made is on those top 3, top 5 bets and potentially a long shot for the race win. When you're talking about pinning guys head-to-head, whether it's a Ryan Blaney versus a Brad Keselowski or whoever, it's way too close to call, and I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I don't recommend using any head-to-head bets this week and parlaying them.
No, I'm not. I feel the exact same way. I didn't even look at them this week, or you know what? I did just because, I had to be curious for the show. But every matchup, they're all pretty much even odds. They're minus 115 both ways, so it's just not worth it. With the odds being plus 900 for the favorite for the race winner, that's what your main focus has to be in. Like I always say for the Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, put 3 bets out there, 1 on your favorite, 2 on gut calls, and just call it good. Let the money fly and watch the race.
Yeah, and you mentioned the head-to-head bets are basically like minus 115. I mean, for that same price, you can get William Byron to finish in the top five. And I feel much better about that than a head-to-head driver bet. So stay away from those this week, at least in our opinion. But Cole, let's also talk over some potential daily fantasy strategy here. I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is a very important week to note starting positions, which we don't know yet as of the time recording this, but just based off the vibes, based off of what we have to go off of right now, you and I each made individual lineups, and I want to see where your head's at. What are you thinking this week?
Yeah, for sure. I felt it'd be fun to just give our own lineups this week, just seeing as it's Talladega. And, it's more gut than anything. So just have fun with this. I figure I'll put a graphic out this weekend. We can see which lineup wins. I'm not going to go too in-depth here with my drivers because I pretty much mentioned all of them on the show. But my lineup going against yours is going to be my ace in the hole, Ryan Blaney, at $11,000. Then I've got both my sleepers in Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain at $9,500 and $8,700 respectively. From there, I've got Daniel Suarez, who I just really briefly mentioned in our value pick segment as someone who's also finished top 10 in 304 starts at Talladega in the next gen. He's $7,200. Then I've got Eric Jones at $7,000 and Todd Gilliland rounding out my lineup at $6,100. What do you got, Steven?
Well, I used a lot of the drivers, and as I look at this now, it's actually all drivers that we've discussed on this episode. My ace was Brad Keselowski, $10,200, and with this lineup, I should also mention, I had $900 remaining salary, so I could have picked Ryan Blaney, but I wanted to pick Brad Keselowski, and I feel really strongly about him this week. There's a few drivers I feel strongly about, so I built this lineup around Brad, my most expensive driver, and then my least expensive driver, Corey LaJoie at $6,600. Again, sometimes you got to go with your gut at Talladega at the super speedways. And my first gut feeling of the week is about Corey LaJoie. I'm sure you can kind of tell that. But I built the lineup around those two. Then you've got my medium price drivers. Second most expensive was Bubba Wallace at $9,200, Ross Chastain at $8,700, and then I had Austin Cindric $7,400 and Eric Jones at $7,000. So Keselowski, LaJoie, Wallace, Jones, Cindric, and Chastain is my pre-qualifying DFS lineup that I feel pretty solid about. All right, Cole, let's end this on a high note. We like to go through our race winner and our sleeper, which, for better or worse, we always do before qualifying in practice, but that makes it more fun. So last week I had picked Kyle Larson, who obviously we saw what happened with his wheel and getting taken out of the race pretty early. You picked Tyler Reddick. So being as I did pick first this week, you've got the first crack at it this week. So give me your race winner, and then I've got first pick of the sleeper.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really have a true gut call just yet, but I definitely feel really good about both Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott. You know what? I will say, though, my gut kind of has been saying Chase Elliott the last day or so, but I think I'd be foolish not to pick Ryan Blaney given his stats going into this race. 3 straight top 2 finishes, coming off his third win. And I just think he's automatic at this track specifically in Talladega. So give me Ryan Blaney for the race win.
Yeah, that's an easy money pick. Like you said, like with those numbers, how do you not pick him first? I showed my cards early. I'm going with Brad Keselowski. I just, you got to go with your gut. Right now, that's what my gut's telling me. I feel good about William Byron too. But honestly, I got to go with Brad this week just based on the result he's coming off of. It just feels like it's leading up to an RFK win this week. And then for my sleeper, I've got first pick. I'm going to go with Corey LaJoie. You got to go with the gut. That's what my gut is right now. It's Brad Keselowski and Corey LaJoie for me this week.
My gut is saying Todd Gilliland. I just feel really good about that team and that driver going into this race. Again, mentioned all of his stats in the next gen in this season at the drafting tracks, and I think that will definitely translate to a really strong day once again in Talladega. Because I didn't mention it, but he also had a pretty decent run in Texas. I don't think the results will show that, but he did lead some laps, ran up front for a bit, along with guys like Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar, as you mentioned. So give me Todd Father.
Well, Cole, let's end this once again like we did last week. When we first started this podcast, we used to go through like our favorite memories at certain tracks. And after we got through a full season doing that, I think it's time to bring that back as we did it last week with Texas. And Talladega is just such an iconic track in so many different ways that there's a flood of memories that come back for me as we head to Talladega. I think there's 3 that immediately come to mind. You and I went to Talladega kind of on a whim, and I think it was 2018, and it was a phenomenal race. Brad Keselowski won. It was cool to see him win in person, growing up as a supporter of his for both of us. And just seeing what Talladega is all about that weekend was really cool. So obviously that trip comes to mind immediately. But there's two other great Talladega memories I have. And one of them, of course, is Jimmy Johnson winning in a 3-wide finish there with Dale Jr. pushing him. That was in 2011. That was one of my favorite race finishes, maybe my favorite race finish of all time. And then finally, 2009, I mentioned the moment earlier in this episode when Brad Keselowski won his first race. And, Carl Edwards goes flying into the fence, and we can talk about it because he was all fine and good. But just such a wild card win there, and insane crash. It's just all the things that Talladega is all about. We got a great in-person memory, a great finish, and a surprise winner. Those are, of all the Talladega memories, those are the three that instantly come to my mind.
Well, you name my top two. First one's got to be the 2009 Brad Keselowski win. Just that imagery of Carl Edwards flying into the catch fence. I will never forget where I was, what we're doing in that moment. And the coolest thing was, too, we had family over flying in from New York for the first time ever that week. We were living in Arizona at that point, obviously. And I remember they obviously had never watched NASCAR before, but they were completely captivated by this wreck. And it was just so cool to see our family, who had never watched a single lap of NASCAR, totally, engulfed in the sport and fully, all eyes on it. So that was cool. Obviously, seeing his first win, Brad Keselowski. And yeah, my other favorite's got to be going to Talladega for the first time and seeing Brad Keselowski win in what was Dale Jr.'s final full-time race at Talladega. That was the reason we made the trip out there, was I wanted to see Dale Jr.'s final race at Talladega, his most winningest track. This was 2017, and obviously you want to see Dale win. He got some damage from a couple wrecks that he managed to somehow barely skate through. But just seeing Brad win that specific race was important to me because it felt like a changing of the guard. As someone who, as you mentioned, we were supporters of Brad since he was with Junior Motorsports, and just seeing him win that race in Dale's final full-time Talladega race was really poetic in my opinion. And also just seeing that really badass Miller Lite car, which I think was their final season in the Cup Series at this point. Seeing them get their final win in the Cup Series as well, because that was a really badass paint scheme. I'm a huge fan of that white base, the navy blue bottom with the red stripe, and then the white wheels were always really, really cool touch. So just an awesome weekend in general at Talladega for us in 2017. Again, a really symbolic day, symbolic weekend, and just awesome time. Whenever Brad Keselowski's in victory lane at Talladega, that's how you know it's usually a pretty damn good race weekend.
Yeah, it just feels right, doesn't it? So this is the GEICO 500, 188 laps and just over 500 miles of intensity at NASCAR's most popular track, Talladega, Alabama. It's going to be a very fun one, and as we've teased throughout the episode, keep an eye on qualifying, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. No practice to worry about, but the race will be at 3 o'clock Eastern Time on this upcoming Sunday. So that'll do it for us. We're going to drop the jack on the most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, the Money Stop. He is Cole Cusumano. I'm Steven Cusumano. Follow us at _Money Stop on social media, including most notably X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Instagram and Facebook. Thank you all once again for tuning in. After a successful week, we hope you were telling us, and we hope you're doing the same this week and taking some super speedway betting advice. So thanks so much. For Cole, I'm Steven, and we'll see you next week.